I will call to order the City Council Transportation, Energy and Utilities Committee at 5:02. And I'll entertain a motion on our agenda.
I would move the adoption of the agenda as posted.
I would second that.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
So we have an agenda. And the second item on our adopted agenda is to adopt the minutes from our 10/26 meeting. Any motion on that?
And I'd move the adoption of the minutes as stated.
I would second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
So we have adopted our minutes. And the third item on our agenda is public forum. So I'll open the public forum. We have no one here in the room. Is there anybody online, Julie?
Nope. Is there all?
No, we're all meeting attendees. I guess we don't have anybody who wants to talk to us. So we'll begin our deliberative agenda, and the first item on our deliberative agenda is a bird bike share update. So who is?
We have Katma here and representatives from Bird who will lead this presentation, I believe. Is that right, Julie?
Yep.
So welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Katie Martin, Associate Director with CATMA. Thanks so much for having us tonight. I will be passing it over to Jeremy Lynch from Bird, who has a presentation for you all tonight. I guess I'll just start off with recognizing that we provided an update via a memo. We do have the presentation to provide the committee after, or I believe actually Maddie has that in her hands now, so please feel free to share that in your packets moving forward. I think I'll just leave it at that right now and have Jeremy kick us off and give you all an overview of the bird system and some of the highlights of the first quarter, some of the lowlights of the first quarter, some of the issues that we're addressing, and what's happening with the system right now as we enter winter and the plans for spring 2024. Jeremy will be kicking us off with some of the highlights, as I've mentioned, starting off with sort of the connections to the bike share system as the regional bike share system, primarily in the Burlington area right now, is serving as a TDM measure to meet some of our climate action goals in the region, in the city, in the region, in the state, and in the nation. And then we'll get into sort of some of the data and go from there. So I'll give it to Jeremy. I'm thinking maybe hold questions until the end, but Jeremy, this is your story to tell with our support. So I'll let you decide how you want to run that part of it. But thank you all so much for having us. I also will add that Emily Adams, transportation analyst with CATMA, is also here tonight, who monitors the data on a day-to-day basis and works with Jeremy and myself on the analysis and sort of pulling together answers to questions and things like that. So thanks again for having us. Jeremy.
Great, thanks, Katie. So for, I guess I can share my screen, which would be, I can have the presentation, which would be cool so everybody can see. It's only about 10 slides. I'm going to be trying to be pretty quick. I'm sure there's a lot of questions and there will be probably questions around some of the subjects I'm going to be covering. So I'm going to kind of do the best I can to keep this under 15 minutes or less. And if you do have any questions that are pending, you may, if you think you may forget, just shout them out. Don't worry. It won't bother me. So, okay, let me share my screen. And there we go. Get into the slideshow. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm just going to learn how to turn the page here. It's not shift. It's not down. It's not left. It's not right. There we go. So back in the summer, as Chapin and Julia know, we Catmull put out an RFP for a bike sharing company, or a bike sharing program. As you know, Bird, we're mostly a scooter program, but Bird had just started with bikes a little more than a couple years ago. And so one of the things we proposed, the bike sharing program, is a free floating model. So it's not a point to point or dock to dock kind of solution. And so, you know, we made our best pitch with Catma about the program, thinking this could be a solution or something that we see as envisioning something taking over the point to point or docked solutions. Across the US, those dock solutions have kind of come under a lot of fire and really have been a hard time being self-sustaining, simply because of the funding source and the really slim margins on those programs. And without a major funding source, it's really hard to keep those smaller programs going outside of Divvy or City or Blue out of Boston, things like that, where they have major donors. So we just thought we'd propose it. Everyone on the committee, or most of the committee, accepted it. And so we launched June 30th. July 1st was really our first opportunity. And one of our, what we're really trying to do is, helping support the city's TDM plan to address, the global climate emergency, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, basically trying to limit the amount of traffic congestion, the amount of Uber or Lyft rides, that kind of thing in the community. It's also one of the things, and I think Rob is on the line too, one of our FMs, revenue generator opportunities for the local entrepreneurs. So they have 2 FMs that manage the program. So those folks are local, that are benefiting from the revenue being generated from the program. And an affordable alternative to car ownership, and also helping to supplement the public transit that is available, not only for the folks in town and in the community with South Burlington, Winooski, but also with the UVM students. And also, something that it's self-sustaining, so it doesn't need any public investment. That's one of the things that's been important, is not having to rely upon the community to help the program succeed. So one of the things we couldn't be more excited about the first 4.5 months, really that first quarter. Ridership has really been through the roof. So, there were nearly 27,000 rides since more or less July 1st, 20,000 since August 23rd, and about 8 to almost 9,000 rides in September alone. So the program really took off. And that's one of the things that I think that needs to be taken into account too when we talk about these programs, that you need a little bit of a runway. It takes a little time for people to get used to the program, how it operates, how to join, how the system works. And believe me, we had a rough start. I'm first one to admit it started a little rough regarding some of the technology and things like that. But once we got things going and got things rolling, as it were, downhill, the program really took off. Nearly 33,400 miles were ridden. On average of those rides, about 1.3 miles per ride. What does that really mean? So to me, 1.3 miles, and given my experience in this industry, which is going on 6 years now, short rides mean they are purpose-driven rides. Meaning people are riding those bikes to go to a particular location. They have a purpose in mind where they're going to work, to the pharmacy, to go out to eat, wherever it may be, go to class, things like that. They are riding it for a purpose, if they're only riding it for that period of time. And the minutes is also, so 10.8 minutes is really what, on the average, all those rides are entailed. And now I'm going to break this down for you a little more. So in July, the average ride was about 14 minutes per ride. In August, it was 13.5. In September, it was 9.5. And in October, it was 7.8 minutes per ride. Again, something that is telling me, in my experience, that they are being ridden for a reason. Someone's picking it up, riding it home, they forgot something, dropping it off, and the ride ends. They're not touring around. They're not just, tooling on the bike paths. And that's what we saw at the beginning. You saw 15 to 20-minute rides. Those rides have gone down. So what I see is encouraging is that the people in the area are using it for a reason, and they're making it a part of their daily transit or weekly transit, which is really the objective, and one of the things that I'm most proud of. And that's one of the things that I see being one of the big successes of the program. We're averaging, when we got to the right number, we were averaging about 160 bikes per day. That was a little beneath the 200, but I think it was the right number as we were moving along. So when we saw into more or less basically in August, September, and in October, we're averaging around 160, 170 bikes a day, and that was a good number. Obviously, with the membership, we basically had unique riders. This means someone joined and took a ride. There were over 5,000 riders in the course of these first really, less than 4 months, or about 4 months. The average rides per member were about 5.2. And if you factor in the number of people that may have rode it once and ridden that out, it's probably a little higher on average with the steady stream of riders. So, we got riders, we kept them. The ones that maybe were shaken off by the first few weeks of some of the brain tech issues had come back to the system and were clearly riding. And as far as the CO2, we saved 4.72 metric tons over the course of those first four months and change. As a comparison from the last program, we just compared, and Emily was very vital in helping me pull these numbers out. So from September, from 23 and versus 21, the previous company, there was a 32% increase in bikes available to the community, a 300% increase in number of rides, and 3 times as many riders. So overall, the program, in comparison to what was here before, was a resounding success. So one of the things that's tough to do is the further I get on these heat maps and the pick up and ride to, the further you're able to see. So I really wanted to really drop it back just enough. And one of the things I wanted to show was, yes, there is a lot of riding in Burlington and at UVM, but one of the things we are missing was, I think there is opportunities for increased ridership in Winooski and also in South Burlington. But this shows that generally what we thought was going to be the case. And again, I wasn't expecting a lot of ridership in the outer areas or in the areas of Winooski and South Burlington. To get the FMs, to get their feet wet, as it were, to get their legs under them, to get them used to how the patterns work, to going around and collecting the batteries when the batteries were low, to addressing, bad parking, things like that. They had to have a little traction. So keeping them clustered together, it turned out not to be a bad idea. They got a lot of rides. And one of the things, and you'll see as we move along here, is objectively to spread those rides out a little deeper into the community so people in South Burlington and Winooski can certainly benefit. So a couple of the program improvement opportunities. Again, the first one glaring, obviously, parking. We did have some parking issues for sure. People parking in bad locations. And one of the things I know that led to this at the beginning were a couple of glitches in the brain and connectivity as far as the wireless. It was tough for our bikes to connect at some point, so we had to do some swaps. But basically, parking we knew was going to be an issue. Fleet manager, to get those fleet managers to do better sweeps and to be more proactive in the community to address those. We did have those tech and product issues. We actually had to swap out all the brains for all 200 plus of the bikes, which was a chore in and of itself. The communication was the issue. They weren't communicating with us. And so we had to swap the brains and swap the tech inside of them to do that. Once we did that, as we got rolled into August, it really helped improve the ridership. And that's how we saw those bump in rides and how the program got increasingly better. Messaging improvement. One of those things that we really tried to push out as best we could, not only through our app, but with Katie and Katma's help as well. So the way that folks in the community can get in touch with us to report a bike, to if it's improperly parked, if it's damaged, whatever it may be. There are several ways, and we need to do a better job of getting those out. And how do we improve that? Not only working with Katma, but obviously working with Burlington as well, South Burlington, Winooski, just so that everybody knows how to get in contact with us. Because as Valerie can attest at DPW, when she sends us an email over the Vermont 311 email, our FMs respond generally within the hour or sooner if they're out in the general public. So those things are responded to quickly because it comes directly to us, and that's the best way to do that. And so getting those channels out a little better and improving that is important for us as we roll back out in the spring. The community pricing option, which below is, it's a discount available to government assistance programs, veterans, senior citizens, healthcare workers, and students with Pell Grants. What that basically is 50% off their rides if they basically let us know how they qualify in any one of those particular groups. I don't even think we had 5 people sign up for that. So really trying to find a better way to get that message out, to get more people riding and to get them the benefit they can so that those rides are halved. And that's one of the things we need to prove on as well. Increasing bike availability, I kind of touched on it with South Burlington, Winooski, but we want to get up to 200 to 300 bikes, but the only way we can do that really without having the cluster in Burlington is to spread those out into Winooski and South Burlington and really make a concerted effort with dealing with those folks, trying to pick out locations and areas where we know the bikes will be popular and making sure we put them there. I know that biking availability in Winooski was popular in downtown because I found repeatedly med students or residents or employees using the bikes to go up the hill to work to the UVM Health Center. And they loved it. And so getting more bikes available in there, and if you don't have enough, if you can't depend on them being there every morning, it's not going to be a reliable thing for them. They're not going to continue to ride. So making sure we have more bikes out in those areas and addressing those particular opportunities will be important. Another real quick one, availability would be, where those UVM Health Center parking lots are, where those vans there, the vans that go back and forth, or those shuttles that take those folks back, employees back up to the health center. If you miss it, you have time to wait. Now, if we were able to station bikes there and they could ride up, easily park and ride back. If they had to leave earlier, 15 minutes, had to wait for a shuttle, things like that, kind of thinking, peeling back a few more layers of the onion to find out where those places are and making sure we have bikes available there is something we want to look at in the spring that I know Katie and Emily will be helping us on as well. Also vandalism. We did see a spike in the beginning where people thought if they were able to break the locks that they would be able to ride off. Thankfully, all it resulted in was a broken lock, because if you're not a member and you didn't sign in, the bikes aren't able to be ridden. So that kind of eased, and the first couple months of the program, it really stopped. We stopped seeing them disappear. And also some of the graffiti on them, we're starting to take advantage of that now, meaning that bringing those in and repainting those. But if all I have is a little bit of paint on the back wheel cover, I'm not too worried about it. So those are the kind of things that we saw, and I'm sure that there are others that you may have as well. But the biggest one being parking, and those are the things we're going to have to address as we move forward. So a couple of the solutions that we had talked about regarding the parking situation was increasing personnel when we come back out in the spring. So what I've talked to my FMs about was basically hiring a couple of folks hourly to do sweeps, generally like Monday through Friday at different times, so they're constantly out monitoring to make sure they're rolling around on the streets. The FMs don't have that capability necessarily to always be doing that, but if they can hire some folks to do that as part-time work to go out and do sweeps, that's important. One of the other things that the two universities have been fantastic at is that I've given ride credit to their eco reps to cruise around campus. I think they have 5 in Champlain and 5 at UVM to basically cruise around campus, and they find a vehicle, a bicycle that's been improperly parked and not at a rack on campus, to report them through community mode, which is an in-app way to report an improperly parked bike. And we have a lot of those that have come in. One of the great thing is, as far as messaging, and I'll jump ahead to that one, is we've been able to send emails to those violators. So anybody that's reported in their community mode, we started an email trail to let them know that they parked improperly and they need to improve that the next time. There could be consequences if they continue to park improperly. So making sure that we let them know that we know they parked improperly, and to let them know that they need to do better. So that's one of the things. As I said, the sweep frequency, increasing that as well, but also the University of Vermont has come up. We're working with them to come up with a better solution about parking at their racks. So that's one of the things they're going to be working through in the next few weeks, to figure out a way with mapping to be able to make sure that the bikes are parked at the racks on the university campus. So technical glitches, as I mentioned earlier, that was one of the things that we've basically overcome, was that really the reception was not particularly good in certain areas, and it wasn't able to, the bikes weren't able to respond very well. We changed the brains and the SIM cards. We were able to overcome that. And what that led to initially was some of the, and I'll call them zombie bikes, that were basically, you saw a bike out for like 3 weeks parked in one location. Like, what in the world is going on? Why is that bike still there? It's because its brain was stopped functioning and we weren't able to communicate it with us. And so once I had basically communicated with the FMs that it's not okay just to drive by those. You need to grab those and take them off the street. We were able to kind of go get those zombies and bring them back in, fix their brains, and be able to put them back out and have them work correctly. So that was one of the things that my team back in, well, I guess all over the US were able to overcome some of those product glitches. The messaging improvement, again, letting more people know about community mode, which is the way the UVM eco reps are using it to report in improperly parked scooters or damaged, or excuse me, bikes or damaged bikes. They use that, a better way to let people know community modes is available. You don't have to ride in order to be able to use that. The Vermont 311 at Bird, Valerie uses that, used to use that on a daily basis to report something into us. And again, that comes to us directly, as do community mode messages. So we're able to address problems straight away. In-app messaging, being able to be more frequent with that regarding about parking, and trying to improve upon our members being able to get the right messaging and being able to park in the proper locations. And again, any city opportunities as well. Like if there are any opportunities as far as messaging goes, where can we put our message on city websites or city message boards, wherever that we can put these kind of opportunities, so that if they call in, they call in our normal 800 number, it's going to take a little longer to get to us than these other areas, other opportunities of communication, for instance, community mode in the Vermont 311. So making sure we do a better job of that. As far as community pricing goes, again, working with Katie and her team to how can we get the word better out to allow those that have qualified for it to get that 50% discount. It's a shame that more people haven't been able to do it. We have been getting UVM students with Pell Grants to be able to join. We should get more community members involved that do qualify to get them that 50% discount. So, taking any information or help from you folks, as well as the CAPMA team, to make sure we increase awareness is one of the things we want to be focused on. Increasing bike availability as we get to the spring as well. Working with South Burlington, Winooski is where we can nest better and more often, more frequently. Where are we going to get riders? Condos, apartment buildings, areas of confluence at different times of the year. That's for spring, and there's different times in the summer, and there's different times in the fall. Learning where those locations are to make sure we can put bikes there, which is something we did very well in Burlington. So trying to find out where those places are to make sure that the bike program expands as it should, and as we promised to do in the RFP, we responded to Cabinet to make sure we fulfill their obligation as well. And vandalism, again, it's one of those things I'm decreasingly worried about. It's just not going to be something that happens. Once you deter a thief realizing they can't go anywhere with it, it kind of drops off the map. So I'm not too worried about it. And like I said, the graffiti is not something that I'm too worried about as well. So those are the things we're going to be focused on in the off season now and as we move forward. So our winter plan, basically, we're currently pulling the fleet now. They are not going to be out in the winter. A couple of reasons for that. First of all, they don't do well in the snow. Those are solid tires. I wouldn't ride it in the snow. The other thing is that the batteries degrade below 32 degrees. And I don't mean if they can just be sitting out unridden, they lose their life as it's below 32 degrees. So keeping them out of that area is really what's important. So we're basically pulling them now. And what we're going to do is during that time is conduct all the repairs. And then what we do is simply put them into hibernation. You basically shut them down, the brain shut down, everything goes quiet. And then, we wait for a particular time in the spring to think about a relaunch. We've sent out messaging to the riders to let them know this is happening currently. And obviously, what we want to do is in the winter plan is working with Katie and her team, not only to improve operations is the thing I talked about previously, but the opportunities as far as increasing that fleet. As far as the spring relaunch, we're, again, any of the program adjustments, we're trying to figure out talking to Rob and Casey, I thought March would be a time, and they're like, no, it can be big snowstorm time of year for surprisingly for me, even being from Massachusetts, for Burlington. So it may not be March. It could be, sometime later in March, early April. So that's what we're kind of looking for. One of the things we want to stay clear of is obviously DPW and plows and things like that. And you just know where to hide bikes when they're plowing and things like that. So we want to avoid that altogether. So again, the number of bikes to increase, the number of nests where we place those bikes in the market, messaging and the tech, and also working with the FMs on the sweeps to try to get those down, and the areas in which they need to concentrate on is one of the things we'll be working towards when we come back out in the spring. And that's a really quick, high-level overview of the program thus far.
Thanks, Jeremy. Questions from the committee? Go ahead.
Sure. I've just raised my hand, but
Oh, there it is.
surprise, surprise, I have a number of things.
Fire
So
away.
both Jeremy and Katie, thank you for this. This is really quite helpful, and believe it or not, I am encouraged. And for those who don't know me, and Katie knows me a little, but you don't at all, that is actually a mean feat that you pulled off. So I want to encourage you and support the increase in fleet manager sweeps, the increase in personnel, that proactive effort to make sure that people aren't blocking sidewalks. Our sidewalks are only 5 by 5. That's the standard. We don't have a double wide except down in the downtown. So when somebody parks on the sidewalk, they are blocking handicap access. We've had complaints about that when they park in the intersection. You know, strollers can't get there. You know, I don't need to describe that. So that is really, really important. And it would be, I think, possibly helpful if your technology identifies hotspots where there are problems, then, you know, like making, you know, some real clear solutions on that, you know, that are going to be more particularized to those areas. And that might even include racks or spaces, you know, they're not really akin to docking, but, you know, like places where it's really clear, because for whatever reason, this is a spot that is constantly having use, but it's also having folks that are not parking correctly. So I think that, and I think that I'm encouraged by what you said, to think that there are going to be innovations in that. I want to encourage you to really look strongly at the plans to increase low-income ridership. I represent the Old North End, and that's the Riverside. It's Riverside Avenue that comes, you know, goes to Winooski. It's in the North Winooski Avenue corridor that we have another item on related to bike lanes. And it would be, I think, particularly helpful if we can figure out a way to increase the usage in the North Winooski Avenue area in that community, where if you were to go to our agenda, you will see a survey on that we'll be dealing with later on, and the continued issues related to parking. And obviously, if people can get around without needing their car, then all of a sudden we've got some great work there. So it's really important. I would like to actually understand numbers. I don't need to hear them now, but I think that it would be very helpful to get numbers on the usage in the Old North End of Burlington in particular, and North Winooski Avenue, that corridor that we're trying to encourage bike ridership. And let me just encourage you to also be working more closely with developers. We've passed, and I was the sponsor and main pain in the ass of the zoning ordinance to get the transportation demand management requirements that we've got for developments in Burlington. And bike sharing is a feature. So the direct connection, if there's a way that you know, you can be making those direct connections with developers in the city, that would be good. There's going to be, I think, big developments down in the South End. There are big developments that are occurring downtown in the pit, and that's a term of art that we use up here, Jeremy, for so yeah, I would just really encourage that. And you know, I got several more, but maybe I'll just leave it with this, and then I'll communicate. I can communicate if you send a link. I can communicate these. Other words, the links with Winooski and South Burlington and Burlington, I think, are tricky because they are really commuting. They are not the type of 5-minute trip or 7-minute trip or even 9-minute trip that you've got to deal with, and the infrastructure is particularly difficult, right? And that is especially true in the non-residential areas of those, but the commercial areas there. So it's akin in a way maybe to what you're developing in terms of the racks with the medical center and the university. And I think that looking at them as commuter options or something, it's just a different way of looking at them, almost like the TDM feature.
Sure.
And I think this is a longer term the problem that we're going to solve, but if that means it's a sort of an opportunity, because we need to create, I don't know if you've been over the Winooski Bridge, which is like hell to get across on a bicycle, and it's tricky on to walk. So, and that's going to be redone in the next, I don't know, we don't know how long.
5 years.
5 years, somebody says, so, okay, in the next 10 years, we'll have that done. So you're going to double construction projects. And the Winooski and the South Burlington connection over the interstate, which they're talking about a bridge. And how long is that going to take before we get that bridge over the interstate or under the interstate or whatever it is?
3 years.
5 years.
3 years, 10 years. So in the next 10 years, we may have some major connections that are going to be with those areas. So building this to be able to do that will be, I think this is visionary as it relates to transportation demand management, which all around the world we need to be doing a better job of. And if you get me the what's this, some links to you, I'll flood you with a few more comments, but I know we have to leave time for other people, so I'll shut up now.
Thanks, Gene, very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gene. Hannah?
Yeah, thank you for this. I think my one question is, you mentioned that you were sending emails to folks that didn't follow the rules in terms of leaving the bikes in an appropriate spot. What has the response been like to that? Like, have you seen that the same individuals are causing the same problems, or are folks changing behavior after receiving emails?
So we started that pretty late in the process. So basically we started that in mid-October. So I wouldn't say we saw any kind of marketed improvement yet. But I would say we will be able to get a better idea in the spring what that looks like. It wasn't something we started right away. We just started it as a way to let those folks know that that's what's happening. And again, so when I talked about the FM sweepers, as it were, using community mode, that's the only way we can actually track those folks. So it's find out who parked it there, who was the last one, and only through that, by scanning that QR code, the community, by reporting it through community mode, can we identify the rider. Generally, what happens is most of the time when you send an email like that, most people respond positively to it. And that's one of the things that our system can do, is check and see who are repeat violators. And that's one of the discussions I'm having with Captain and some other folks about. It's up to them what we want to do. Do you want another carrot, or a stick? Depends on how you guys want to approach it. So I'm open for anything. We do it differently in a lot of other communities. But so far it's been good. I know we've gotten better at UVM. I mean, we're going to see what happens as we move along here, but I'd rather see a lot of that same type of reporting in done by our team and anybody else in the community via community mode for the downtown area as well. So we can, at least message those folks as well. Because again, that's where a lot of the complaints had come from regarding parking on the sidewalks and ADA compliance. But we'll get a better handle as we come back out.
Yeah, I wonder if like sending text messages would maybe be more well received. Like, I represent a large number of students, and I know trying to reach them over email is virtually impossible, but if we send a text message to them, then we get like I can get a response from them very quickly. And I think that's probably the case of, you know, a lot of emails get flagged for spam and such, and so you may be more likely to respond to a text rather than an email, but obviously there's accessibility there where some folks don't, you know, have phones. But that's just a thought.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that too, Hannah. It was something Jeremy had brought to us, and I think, as he's mentioned before, we'll start with something like that in the spring. I know, Jeremy, you've done that at other universities, campuses, where that first month and a half of a system back on the ground is when you really try to do as much education through some of those communications as you can, try to get ahead of it. But again, it does come back to like having the resources of folks being able to make notifications through the community app. And I think that was great that we were able to build a little bit of that on campus and understand how to get people involved in that process. And so that would be like a leg up moving forward in the spring.
That's Diana. Okay, thanks. I had a couple of questions. The first is just on terminology. FM, is that like a fleet manager?
Yes.
And are they independent contractors that are working with Bird, or are they Bird employees?
Independent contractors.
Okay. And the next one was around something we started talking about when we had the brief update at our last TOOC meeting, which was the sort of having to message in-app, and like a lot of people that might want to report a zombie bike or some other improperly parked bike might not be Bird members. And so we had asked at the last meeting if a phone number could be used for some folks that just want to call. But the other thing that's occurred to me is we should integrate this with SeeClickFix and we're trying to train a lot of people in our city to use SeeClickFix to report all manner of problems, and they get routed to the right place. So this might be an opportunity to do something like if there's a zombie bird bike or improperly parked bird bike, if it was a SeeClickFix, there's a lot of people using that app that may not be using the Bird app, that could maybe simply through an API or something send a message to the appropriate email, the 311 email or whatever. But that might be an opportunity for integration. But what about the idea of having a telephone number that's also available that people can call? Maybe it wouldn't be on the bikes, but it could be on the website or something.
It is on the bikes.
Okay, good.
There was an 800 number on all the bikes and on the website. I think your idea of integrating SeeClickFix, if that's what I just heard, that's excellent. If there's a way to integrate that so that Vermont 311 email or some other way to get in contact, that'd be a great idea. Because again, that's directly to us. And so I think that would be a wonderful idea.
People pick the right item, you should be able to set it up so that it would immediately forward to that address.
And we've done it for like dealer cleanup and all sorts of other things that are.
Yeah, we do staff it very closely, so things are usually referred quickly, but we can look at an auto forward if there's a category specifically for an improperly parked bike.
Or just do the manual forward, but I'm just for efficiencies.
Yeah.
Which is what Val has been doing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's all I had. Thank you. That was really informative. I'm wondering, this presentation that you gave, Jeremy, doesn't match the one that's on our agenda. I'm wondering if we could also attach the latest presentation to the agenda.
Yeah. So Jeremy and Katie, if you can forward the PDF to our staff, and we will get it online for the public to see.
Sure, I did forward that along to Maddie this morning, but I'm happy to share that again.
Okay.
If I could just ask that if there's more granular data on usage on and like where things are being used, where the low income people are coming from. There are only 5 apparently, but just sort of who they are, where they are, things that would give us a real sense, a better sense of where the usage is and what the
I would say,
concentrations are.
Gene, I would say real quick, I would say, what I don't know is where those people are. You telling me where those people are and I can put bikes there. That I'd rather work the other way around. You
That
tell
would-
me who they are and I can put bikes there. That'd
So
be
perhaps, I think
what I mean?
perhaps maybe through Katma, Katie, and Emily, we can actually have some conversations to improve that, and perhaps in relationship to the ongoing work that we're doing on North Winooski Avenue, that there's an opportunity there. And I would be very happy to meet. I have met with Katma's folks over the last 3 years a lot, and I will continue to want to do that. So that sounds like an invitation that I will accept right here and now.
Great. I'll just give you a little background, Gene, on that. So from our old system and some of the planning that was done under the Regional Planning Commission around the bike share systems in the past, sort of we compiled a list of potential nesting locations for bird. DPW was involved in that list as well. And so we're happy to sort of, so this was initiation of nest locations. Obviously, the way that the system functions now, which we think is through the data is showing that it's more successful than the docked systems, is that as the users use the system, they dictate where those bikes kind of end up being most effectively nested the next day. So the FMs are sort of managing that and moving, thank you, Jeremy, and moving those bikes to those locations where they're seeing people end trips or wanting to end their trips and things like that. So it's a more dynamic system now, but I would be happy to share that list with Tuke, or just have those conversations again with DPW, bring you in sort of and see what those missing pieces are, those missing neighborhoods, those missing streets, those missing blocks, and add those to the list for the fleet managers to recognize and have them in their queue as they start the system back up again.
I think it'd be great to have a conversation and to think about a little bit of intentionality in terms of where we want to go, and perhaps we will fail in it, but I mean, I do think that there are places that are ripe, and Jeremy mentioned them. The hospital and UVM are prime locations, and it sounds like you're going to be exploring that. So we've got some opportunities that I'd love to examine.
Thank you, well, thank you for that. And I guess we'll close the bird bite update, and we'll move on to the lead and copper rule revisions.
Eliana, is there a hand raised for Eliana from Champlain?
Oh, there's a hand raised. So I don't see that.
Can y'all hear me?
There she is.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, okay, sorry to interrupt and jump on a little bit later than usual. My name's Eliana Fox. I'm the Sustainable Transportation Coordinator at Champlain College. I'm also a Ward 7 resident bird user, and so I just want to speak quickly in support of this system. I know, like anything that's new, it's had a learning curve. But I do feel like it's working really well. I feel like Bird and Katma have been really great partners to us on campus. You heard Jeremy mention the EcoRep program with reporting badly parked birds. We lovingly call our EcoRep bird students bird watchers. So sort of a nice, meaningful connection there. And beyond that, Bird also gave us like a couple hundred, I think, helmets to distribute for free to students at the beginning of the school year. I'm sure they did the same at UVM. And so, just a testament to them being a good partner to us as institutions. And then I also just want to speak quickly as someone who uses this system, some just quick examples of how I've used it and how I've seen other people using it. my partner and I live between the old North End and the new North End. It's a little bit too far to walk downtown. Most of the time we bike, but on those days we don't feel like biking, we'll take the bus in. And if we're getting home late from like a dinner or something, and the transit isn't running as frequently, it's really nice having the option of Bird to get back when those transit, when the buses are only running every 90 minutes, right, between after 9 o'clock. It's just been a real game changer for that sort of thing. I'm also one of those annoying people who wakes up at 6 a.m. to run every morning before work. And I've seen people using the Birds at 6 a.m. because that's another time when our transit service is not sufficient, right? As Jeremy mentioned, people in scrubs biking up the hill to UVM Med Center. I've seen it firsthand. And so, yeah, just wanting the counselors to hear that this is how the system is being used in my experience. I feel like it's working well. And yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your comments. So with no other comments, we'll move on to the
Water service line inventory.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Megan Moyer. I'm the Division Director for Water Resources, and I'm here with our Water Resources GIS and Field Specialist, Emily Piersek, who's going to do a lot of the presentation, but to do a little bit of background first. And to just name, we're talking about something that can be really scary. It's been really scary in other communities, which is lead in drinking water. So I want to make sure you are well poised with information from the past and the fact that lead is not currently a problem for Burlington. While Emily has found some evidence of the possibility of lead having been used in the past, and there could be some out there, we have not come across it in 35 years of digging in the streets. And so that does give me comfort that we are not looking at a huge problem with regard to lead. That being said, there is a requirement from the EPA that we be doing a thorough inventory, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So national awareness about the health effects of lead exposure through drinking water kind of peaked early in the 1980s. And at that time, the Safe Drinking Water Act was amended to ban the future use of lead pipes in the water systems, but it didn't at that time retroactively require utilities to go through their systems and remove lead pipes, which is why you have a lot of communities, like Michigan, I believe DC, who do still have a fair amount of lead pipes in their system. In 1991, they actually established a specific rule, the lead and copper rule, to protect users against exposure to lead and copper in the drinking water, and they established maximum contaminant levels for both of those constituents and required water systems to implement treatment programs if more than 10% of their samples were not compliant. So in that time period, 1980s, we started conducting sampling following the EPA procedures to assess different heavy metals in our water. At the time that we did that, we did find 6 sites that had elevated lead levels when immediately sampled at the tap. Lead sampling, you go through a number of different types of sampling. I can't remember all of them. Emily may know them, but there's the quick immediate sample. There's the flush sample, and then I think there's a third one. From the extended one.
The extended one, because based on those different time frames, different amounts of lead can be sloughing off if you do in fact have lead in your pipes. Additionally, Lake Champlain water, which is our water source, is naturally soft and low in dissolved minerals and has a neutral pH, and so it can be corrosive to indoor plumbing. One of the things we have to keep distinguishing between is the city's water system up until the meter, and then people's indoor plumbing, right? So this effort that we're going to be talking about is focusing on inventorying the city's system, including the service line to the house. It is not necessarily focusing on the indoor plumbing that somebody may have beyond the meter. The good thing is, as part of the 1980s efforts and realizing that we were seeing some elevated lead levels, we started doing corrosion control back in 1984. This first looked at like adding sodium hydroxide, I believe, to affect the pH to prevent the corrosion. And then later on in the 1990s, we switched to what we're using now, which is zinc orthophosphate.
Per regulations, we sample lead and copper levels every 3 years at 30 high priority locations that have been approved by the state. And it is important for people to know that since we started doing that water treatment with the zinc orthophosphate in 1990, we've been in compliance with all the maximum levels of lead and copper. I think as people are aware, with Flint, Michigan and some other communities, the EPA has taken a harder look at the rule, the lead and copper rule, and has promulgated a revision to better protect children and communities from lead exposure by going after significant sources of lead in the nation's drinking water. And so what this looks like, the first step, is really for all of these utilities, including us, to develop and submit inventories of their service lines. So we have some records of service lines, some of them are in GIS, some of them are not. We have lots of paper records, but this process that Emily's going to talk about is actually going through all of our records and then going through other processes to really try to nail down what the material type is of the various service lines in the city. Through the work that Emily's done, we looked at the annual reports, and in the old annual reports, they were very detailed about the projects that they did and the materials they used. And interestingly, from 1929 to 37, the list of types of pipes in the system does include lead. It also includes galvanized and cast iron, which is typically what we see when we've dug up lines. Importantly, from the reports from 1939 onwards, don't mention lead as a potential pipe material. So it seems like we might have used it for a brief time period. Some of this project will uncover whether or not maybe we've already identified it, replaced it, does it still exist, so on and so forth. So again, even though we have no records or anecdotal evidence of active lead service lines that we've encountered in the field, we are still required to submit this inventory in order to remain in compliance with regulations. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Emily.
Thank you, Megan. So we have around about 11,000 service lines in the city. That includes all drinking water potable lines, as well as irrigation and fire services. So of those, about 11,000 service lines in our GIS system and our computerized convenient to access records, we have 4,316 of those, like we actually know the material in a computer, very easy to access. The rest of those are not in our computerized system. There's almost 7,000 of those. That's not to say that we don't know the material of those lines. That information is present in our paper records. It's just buried in a stack of paper that we have to sift through. So it looks like a huge, scary number of unknown, but in the work that myself and some other staff have been doing, we found that about 80% of the lines that we look at in the records, we can find a material, and about 20% we have to do some further digging. So the general process is right now is exclusively a paper records review, a very exhaustive look through historic service line installation books, any meter appointment records. They'll go in and they'll take a picture of the meter, and oftentimes we can see the service line there. So any basically touch point where we have contact information with a homeowner or a customer, and we can look at the service line material or installation records, we're pulling that information. And then once we get a really solid base of information there, we're going to go out to in-person inspections. We're going to go to canvassing and knocking on doors and asking people if we can come in and take a peek in their basement and find their service line. And then while all of that's going on, we are currently developing a survey to send out to all homeowners and tenants in the city to have them self-identify their lines so that they can go down into their basement, snap a photo, fill out just a few questions, and send that into us. And that'll prevent us from having to go out to their home, and it will help us confirm what information we have on file. And really, it's going to be a huge help for us to get as many citizens as we possibly can to do this survey. It should take them about 10 minutes. It's going to be really easy for them. I think the hardest part for them is going to be opening the utility closet or going to their basement and actually finding the service line is often the hardest part for people. So the goal is to get customers to help us out here as much as they possibly can.
And it's not a competition, but I will let you that the DPW Commissioner, Peggy, has already done this after the presentation we gave to the DPW Commission. So I'm just saying, councilors, we expect to get your data as quickly as possible.
So our general timeline for the whole project, right now we are working on outreach to citizens of Burlington. There's a quarterly mailer that we send out with water bills. It's called Burlington on Tap. It's pretty neat. It has some information about water resources and projects we're working on and winterization tips for winter. So that will go out, I believe next week. That should go out to about 2/3 of the city, and then the month after it'll be the rest of the city will receive this mailer that's going to tell them about this project. So councilors, I don't know how often you hear from your constituents about things like these, but you may expect to hear an increased volume of calls or concern about lead in the water, and the message is that we are not concerned about lead in the water. So once we kind of go out with that initial outreach, we are going to then directly outreach to some priority properties. So places that we've looked through the records, we know that we don't have the information, neighborhoods that were developed during a time when they could possibly have used lead, you know, that sweet spot between 1929 and 37, where we don't have information, they haven't, you know, reinstalled the service line. So we're gonna do some targeted outreach to higher risk communities within the city. Once we're completed with that, we're going to be compiling our responses, and throughout this whole time filling out the inventory spreadsheet that we have to send to the state of Vermont as well as the EPA. And then once we get a decent body of responses, we're going to do follow-up and continued mailers and just kind of keep pushing the message that we would like as many people as possible to respond. And then in October 2024, the entire survey is due. We have to send our complete summary of responses to the state of Vermont. They'll share our responses with the EPA. And then within 30 days of submitting our inventory, we're required by the revised lead and copper rule to notify the public of our findings. So should we, in very unlikely cases, find any lead service lines or find any service lines that are considered galvanized requiring replacement, meaning that they've ever been downstream of lead or we can't prove that they have never been downstream of lead, we are required to inform those homeowners directly of our findings and then just make available the rest of the survey so that anybody can come and look and see, hey, what's my service line? I'd like to know.
And just to chime in on the galvanized, because there are a lot of homes that have galvanized lines. Some of the nuances around the regulations, because many galvanized lines do have a short leaded connector because it needs to be bendy, called a leaded gooseneck. The EPA has very clearly determined that lead lines less than 2 feet long are not considered, they're not going to trigger this concern about galvanized lines downstream of lead. So people who are on galvanized lines, we do want to know where those galvanized lines are because they are very problematic. They are the most prone to tuberculation or the clogging, the slow clogging that can happen. And a lot of people who have water pressure issues, it's because they have a galvanized line. They're also they more easily corrode than the copper lines and obviously the plastic lines, and so they are our most problematic. And when we come through and we do paving for several years now, we've been asking people to help us identify those so that we can replace them. The other piece, and I don't know if you're going into this, but we are allowed to, like, we're going to hit this as hard as we can and get all the community involved in giving us this information and getting into homes. We are allowed to submit an inventory that has unknowns because there's a couple of things. We may not be able to get in everybody's houses. You know, we have to get permission in order to do that. And then there's 2 sections of the line. There's the part from the curb stop to the home. That's the piece that we can easily, clearly see from inside the basement. The piece from the curb stop to the main, without digging things up or without paper records that say we know what that is, those are likely going to be listed as unknowns. And so that plan that Emily mentioned that we're going to have to submit is largely going to be a plan, assuming we don't have lead lines that we actually need to go out and replace, but a plan of how we're going to resolve those unknowns over some time period. But that's still, we're still able to be compliant with the regulation by going through this sort of robust process to demonstrate that we did everything. Okay.
As for communications, I a little bit touched on this with the timeline, but this month we're sending out that on-tap mailer to everybody who receives a water bill. That does not always include tenants. Typically, water bills will go to the owner of the property. So we are also going to mail postcards to every address in Burlington, and hopefully the tenants will see it that way and be aware of the project and know what's going on and be able to have a stake. We also are, like I said, developing that survey form, a little how-to guide on how to find your water service line, how to identify it, and then complete the form. We have an FAQs page, and you should be able to see both the how-to guide and the FAQs as part of this packet that should have been made available to you, as well as the draft postcard. So we're still working on tweaking some of the wording, but it should be available next week so that when that on-tap mailer goes out with the links and the QR codes, everybody can access the pages. We are also partnering with other city programs like the Burlington Lead program in CEDO, just to have a consistent message, and we're aware of the fact that when we talk about lead, they'll probably get a lot of questions from people because they're, it's bringing it up in the forefront of their mind and they want to maybe find out about other sources of lead in their home and how to keep themselves and their families safe. We're also working with the fire marshal, who they often go into places of business or large apartment buildings and investigate the fire services, the sprinkler systems. So we're going to work with them to try and tap their wealth of knowledge and people power to get more survey responses so that they can go in and just snap a photo and send us the fire service information or the water service information. And we're also working with code enforcement because they also go into homes to try and ask them to snap some photos for us as well. We also plan to partner and reach specifically out to large community organizations, landlords, the University of Vermont, Champlain College, the Medical Center, Burlington School District, just to get the message out to all of the places that we can. And in the unlikely event that you've heard about these regulations from another source, you may know about the requirement that we sample every faucet in schools, or some faucets in schools, but the state of Vermont actually already has an incredibly robust school sampling program in place. And so the state of Vermont is applying for a waiver from the EPA to essentially use our higher quality data that we already have and have had for years and just submit that to the EPA rather than expend more resources on going into the schools and doing it all over again. And as always, the Water Resources Division customer care team is available for your questions. I'm available for questions. The water department is here to support the city and make sure that we have safe, clean drinking water and to support Burlington. Great. Did we go through? I mean, have you all seen them?
We could quickly just go through the flyers or whatever your pleasure.
I've looked at them. Do other counselors want to go through those?
No, okay.
No?
No, I'm good. I'm impressed. I do have one comment.
Yes.
Go ahead, Gene.
Which is, I think that in terms of messaging, it's all it's all laid out as if we're being reactive to the EPA, and that might be the case, but I think that we do care about lead in the water and safety, and it would be better if we were not talking as if we're just reactive to them, but because it's really important to us. And also we have a responsibility to work as quickly as possible with the rule. So it's sort of it's just a different framing of that I think it would be better to say it's because it's important for us to do, and also we've got this deadline, but you're looking, I think, to do this much sooner than at the last minute, and that is an indication of that. And in terms of beating the Public Works Commission, are you sending us magnets? How are we getting magnets?
So we're still working through that, because as I brought up in the Public Works Commission, was thinking through us mailing magnets and them ending up in a big pile in the U.S. Postal Service and then issuing us a citation. So it is more problematic in that you have to package them and wrap them in bubble wrap and things like that. So we're still working through that. It is a very useful thing, and you do have to have sort of a high-powered magnet. It can't just be a flimsy refrigerator magnet, which I would love, because then we could do cute things and put our phone number on it and things. So I don't know if you have any updates on that process or how much it may cost, but we are still looking into it.
Yes, and another sort of option we have discussed is making like depots of magnets available across the city. So just like having a basket here where customer service at Pine Street can hand out magnets, or at the NPAs there can be magnets, or City Hall, or wherever customers might come in and interface with City of Burlington staff.
You can stick them to bird bikes, and then have them.
I mean, it seems as if my reading of that, and it was obviously just a one-time through, all of it, but was that the magnets are an important piece of doing it. So, and it's sort of like to go through from the beginning to the end and finish the survey and then post your photo. That's a big piece. So, that sounds like it's an area of concern, for whatever
Yes.
that's word.
Yeah, we're just trying to really logistically figure it out without, and is there a way to target it to certain people? Like, it really only becomes an issue from my standpoint if somebody doesn't know if it's galvanized or lead. If it's copper, it's usually pretty clearly copper. You don't need the magnet to do that. And so there may be a way of iterating through it so that we're not buying 10,000 magnets or 11,000 magnets. So we're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and
Okay.
really we landed on the magnets because to type your service, you can scratch it, and galvanized will stay dull when you scratch it, and lead will turn shiny when you scratch it. But in again, the unlikely event that anybody has a lead service, we don't really want to be encouraging people to like scratch lead and like introduce that into their life. Yeah, so we're still working on the magnet solution.
All right, but it's not required to be able to complete the survey. That's not clear from the materials to me.
Yeah, we should try to make it so that if they can't tell, but they can send us a picture, like, because sending us a clear picture, we may be able to tell, or we may be able to say, oh, we can't tell, and we want to come to your house, or we're gonna drop off a magnet so that you can do that last test.
Right, or thanks for the picture, we have a record of this, and now it confirms that,
Yeah.
this is galvanized.
Okay, thanks. That's all for me.
Anna? That's my turn. So I guess in terms of the magnets, I was just thinking, is there another non-magnet, like you could send some sort of like test that you could like paint on or something?
I mean, like the little stick things?
Or something. I
Well,
guess-
it's not that hard. So I
just an
definitely use
idea.
those for paints,
Right.
but that might be a good thing to look into. They're like little swabs, and I don't know if they would work, I assume they would work on metal, and that would be a lot easier.
I'm sure they would, but would they at all get cross-contaminated by lead paint if they get in the house?
Potentially, but yeah.
Something to look into.
Yeah.
Just something, because then you would.
Yeah, because I
get
definitely
around-
used those in an old house on windowsills before my,
Or something other
Yeah.
that you can
Yep.
put on a pipe and.
Yep.
React to certain, whatever, I don't know.
no, that's a great idea.
And the other thing was to get people to, I love the idea of sort of crowdsourcing this data collection, and to incentivize the people somehow to do it. So like maybe it's if you do it by a certain date, you get some cookie. It's like, I don't know if you can
You get a magnet.
You might get a magnet.
No, so the DPW commission seemed okay with the concept of like random drawings for gift cards to local businesses. So trying to set it up so that like certain deadlines, if you respond by this date.
You can win a car, for instance.
Yeah.
Not a car, not
A bird bike.
a bird bike, subscription is. But something.
Is that something that, I mean, you guys would feel okay?
I mean, personally, I think to get people to act,
Yeah.
you have to sometimes incentivize them. Otherwise, it's just, I never look at my water bill, we just do bill pay and
Yeah.
whatever it is, I
Yeah.
assume you've calculated it correctly. I don't look at that much, and other households may be like me, but
Well, that's why we are gonna be doing a separate postcard.
good, yeah.
That would be going out and, be appropriately urgent, but, it's that fine line, like Jean was saying, of giving people this information, but not creating
Right, not creating.
worry that we have some problem that's out there. Again, we don't believe there's a problem, but this is an important step in confirming that 100% there are no significant sources of lead, because if there are, we're gonna be taking care of those at no cost to the customer as quickly as possible.
So I don't know how other councilors feel, I'm supportive of, if some sort of incentive.
Yeah, okay.
You could do. I don't know if others have comments on that. No,
I don't see a need. It's, for the expense of it, to be quite honest, although it may be that depending on the level of response that there might be a need. But I do think that this is in all of our interests, and it's important for us to do the work. So,
No, I love these, I mean, these projects are challenging to be doing on top of everything else, but I enjoy these from the perspective of engaging people with their own infrastructure. Cause there's a lot of like, oh, that's the city. I'm like, well, you live in the city and you're paying for this. Getting people down in their basements, actually looking at their water meter, knowing where it is, knowing where the shut off is. I mean, have you all visited your water meter or service line? Just making
oh
sure.
yeah,
It's really important to know where your shut off is.
Yes.
If you have some sort of water catastrophe.
Yep.
You
yeah.
don't wanna learn about
You
it
wanna be
in the
ignorant.
middle of one of these problems, so.
I put a blanket on mine every night and sing to it before I.
Well, there you go. Keep it from freezing.
But yeah, this is all very, very cool.
Yep. Awesome. Well, spread the word as you see more information coming out. If you can just be cross-posting and reminding people and, you know, bringing it up at dinner parties, Christmas or other holidays.
And I look forward to getting emails from all of you with pictures of your services.
So I do want to say that in just looking back at the materials, that the way that you structure the taking the survey, number 3 is, you know, like do the magnet test. So
Yep.
obviously you've got to redo that. And it probably, if you're really seriously rethinking it, should
Tweak
pull that.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have to make a decision on the magnets and how we're gonna send them out or not.
Yep. I
think
was
that's
looking forward to my
everything.
magnet. Now that's an incentive, getting magnets, Mark.
Yeah.
High power magnets. That would be that'd be really good.
Magnets. We used to have one of those, like my dad, it was like literally you had to like peel it off of the refrigerator, it was so strong. So, awesome, well, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for that. So moving on. Next is a North Winooski Ave survey update. I think Philip's probably in there. Yes. Share my screen. Okay. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Letting me present today, Phil Peterson with DPW. I'm gonna try and fly through all this data pretty quickly so that we can get to the discussion portion.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know we want to depart in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
25 minutes, so.
I will make it quick.
Great.
So we kind of all know the background with North Winooski Avenue. There's the configuration, so allow for the allocation of bike lanes between Union and Riverside along North Winooski that involve parking. And so we put together this survey in collaboration with 2 other city departments, Burlington Workforce and Development. That survey was distributed utilizing the email list of stakeholders, and also we did 2 rounds of flyer distribution. 1 round involved in-person staff. I was there. Folks from the Business and Workforce Development Office were there as well. And we had 203 survey respondents. So let's just kind of go through the data, some survey demographics. Pretty even distribution as far as folks, their age respondents. Majority of respondents were female. Majority of respondents identified as Caucasian or white as far as the ethnicity of the respondents. Majority of respondents were also folks that live in the neighborhood, in the Old North End. Most folks use North Winooski Avenue on a daily basis, so we do have folks that are utilizing North Winooski Avenue quite a bit. And as far as how folks ranked traveling on North Winooski Avenue, the majority of respondents, around 80, identified as people that are utilize motor vehicles. Second would be people that utilize bicycles, scooters, skateboards, and pedestrians, and then last was by bus. Important to note, some of the respondents identified their primary mode of travel involved more than just one source. Overall, for all respondents, 61% of all respondents feel the new configuration improves safety along North Winooski Avenue, and the majority of respondents feel, I think the numbers are like 54% feel like it's more functional, and that's all respondents. Chapin and I discussed that we felt like it was important to break those out by category, just to kind of see what the different categories of folks felt like. Bus riders, 61% feel like the new configuration is safer, while 10% feel like it's less safe. I do have specific numbers as far as numbers go. 14 respondents felt like it was safer, while 9 respondents felt like it was less safe. It's also in the report itself. 44% felt the change is more functional. This is bus riders again, while 37% felt the change is less functional. Pedestrians, 44% felt the change is safer, 23% felt the change less safe, while 44% felt the change is less functional, and then 36% felt the change is more functional. There's some comments that could kind of illuminate why pedestrians feel that way. One pedestrian felt the street feels much wider than before, which could allow cars to speed more. There was one respondent, a woman, who said, I have to park very far away to go to my job at Riverside. She also identified as a motor vehicle user. Sometimes I have to stay very late, like 7 or 8 o'clock, and I feel very worried walking to my car as a woman by myself in the dark. So that may illuminate why that's the case with functionality. For bike riders, 83% felt the change is safer, while 2% felt the change is less safe, which is no surprise there for the new configuration. Functionality, bicycle riders felt 75% felt the change is more functional, while 15% felt the change is less functional. And then the majority of respondents, motor vehicle folks, 46% felt the change is safer, while 24% felt the change is less safe. And then for functionality, 49% felt the change is less functional, while 35% felt the change is more functional. This is just a reiteration of all respondents. 63% feel it's safer, 54% feel the new configuration is more functional. We did collect occupancy count data, and we collected the occupancy count data over 3 days from November 14th to November 16th. Tried to keep it in the middle of the week. And we did it at 3 different times on each of those days, 9 a.m., 1 p.m., 7 p.m. Julie got to get involved in that as well. North Winooski Avenue along this section has an overall occupancy rate of 80%, with a maximum occupancy rate of 88% at 9 a.m. on November 15th. An 80% occupancy rate definitely suggests a significant demand for parking in the area. For traffic counts, our traffic data was collected utilizing MyoVision. MyoVision technology at the Winooski and Riverside intersection. Intersection is not an ideal location for a comprehensive look at the data, given the unique configuration. It's almost like, it's not a 5 corners, but it definitely is not the best location to collect data if we're looking at all the different counts. We recognize that limitation. And so DPW staff set up a traffic counting, automated traffic counting between Archibald and I think it was Riverside. Yeah, it was a mid-block count. Unfortunately, that device was stolen, chain and all. They only left behind a couple of rubber tubes and some duct tape. Yeah, still kind of irritated about that, but that definitely resulted in the loss of some pretty good data that we could have used. So the majority of the traffic comprises light vehicles at the Riverside and Winooski intersection. And single unit trucks and buses are a relatively small part. Bicyclists, the presence of the bicyclists kind of suggests potential interest in that transportation mode. But again, it's not the best representation of the data. I did put a sampling of some of the respondents' comments in the presentation, just kind of for the record. I also included all the respondents' comments in the actual report itself. We don't need to review all these, but they're in there just so that it's part of the public record. And that's pretty much it. I think at this stage, we can get into any questions, comments that you all have. Open it up to Councilor.
Sure. So I'm struck by the occupancy numbers and the fact that we're in, I mean, there's a significant demand, as you just said, Philip. And that combined with the not insignificant objection to functionality really speaks to the need for more TDM work in that corridor, and it sort of dovetails with what I was commenting about with the bird bikes and the need to try to figure out ways to assist people in getting alternatives, getting fewer cars there, trying to get people to the services and businesses without having to drive. So that's my my basic sort of takeaways. And I mean, I also think that the comments about the intersection of Winooski and Riverside, that is definitely a piece of the problems with bike travel that we've got. And you just see it in terms of how people navigating, and it's sort of a kamikaze approach to getting across to the shared use path, or going on there, and then going on Riverside down to Oak, where the road narrows significantly. It gets, although that's not North Winooski Avenue, but it gets kind of tricky in terms of all that bus traffic. So again, I think that this speaks to the need to continue to work, and to work with more than just DPW, but to work with the business development folks, to work with CATMA, to see what we can do in that regard. And I stand ready and willing to continue to assist in that. And the only other question I had is, when they said people used North Winooski Avenue, was that all the way to Pearl Street? It did not seem that the question was tailored to just the Union to Riverside.
No, it was just Union to Riverside. I mean, the survey itself.
So it was just the summation on the. I only got through the summary text. I didn't get into the actual questions. Okay, great, thanks. That's it for me.
Thanks, Gene. Hannah?
I don't have any comments, but thank you.
I had questions, I guess, on the number of respondents. I don't recall the number of respondents we got on the earlier surveys, but it's 203 less. We get wasn't it or is that about the same? Maybe, and if you don't know, that's fine. But I'm wondering if that's a good response or an okay response.
I mean, I think it's a pretty good response, honestly. Our previous survey, if you were referring to the scoping study, was on a much longer corridor beyond the 2 blocks. But I believe there were more respondents when we looked at that larger corridor.
We've done surveys like this before for other projects, and that number is pretty healthy response.
Okay.
It's good response.
And then are there any immediate DPW actions that are informed by the survey results? Like to jump out at you with something that you might want to.
I think the most immediate one, and Councilor Bergman and I have discussed this, is that continuing to work with the community health center on their off-street parking. Yes, there is high occupancy on the corridor. To the extent that we can get the all-day parkers off the street and allow more transient users on the street, I think everybody benefits. So we've been following up. In September, the council approved the $15,000 for the Community Health Center to do more geotech and design work. We are, thanks to Philip's work, working with the city attorney to draft a grant agreement for CHC, and hope is to get that wrapped up soon so that they have the assurity that they can proceed with that additional design work over the winter.
Well, you beat me to my third question, was to ask you for an update on the community health center parking, so. Yeah, it's, you know, one of the things that, and I mentioned when we were doing survey development, but I didn't like harp on it too much, is I would like to know anecdotally from businesses like Pho Hong, is their takeout business off, is their dine-in business off, and maybe we just need to go.
It's a lot of anecdotal.
There's a lot of
conversations that happen.
Right.
So like, well, you know, he's great.
Right.
We were together when we went out and did the survey, the TDN brand stuff. He just knows everything. And I was able to witness some of those conversations that he had, and I would say in general, anecdotal, the conversations he had with folks were, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Good, I heard a lot of that. Folks still had frustrations that they would share with him. But not as bad as I thought it would be. I heard that a lot. So what that means now, and what that means in 6 months.
Good, well, that's encouraging. And the other thing that jumped out at me a little bit was that the majority of the people seem by and large to think it's safer, which is sort of the experience we had on North Avenue. We had a lot of people who were objecting to the bike lanes, but everybody sort of after the fact. It's like, it's not quite as bad as I thought it might be, and it does feel a little bit safer, so those are encouraging.
I think the big thing is we want to keep the lines of communication open with the local businesses to make sure that the time limited parking that we've installed is working for them. And we can make adjustments as we go. So they need to know, like, oh, we're here to help, and we can make changes if you need us.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in hearing more updates on the community health center project as that sort of develops. I don't have anything else. Other comments, questions from the council? Birds? No? Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Sure.
Which takes us to director's report.
Great. Councilor Bergman had asked for a update on payments to the solid waste generation tax. So in online is a quick memo from Lee Perry. I told him he didn't have to stay for the meeting to give us a quick update. All solid waste generation taxpayers are current at the present time. And the delinquency that we had previously had, Lee has nipped it in the bud and worked with all haulers to be routinely current these days. So that's the news in the memo. Happy to answer any questions.
I have one question, Chapin, and that is, I don't see that any of just the, or maybe there's only one composting collection service in the city. I know that there is at least one, but they're not on the list. And it seems to me that they are solid waste collectors. So what's going on with that?
Councilor Bergman, that's a good question. My assumption is that the payments are only paid by the haulers of trash. The surcharge is meant for one unit through their trash bill to pay the cost of recycling, which is around $5 a month. If my home, for example, paid the $5 a month fee from my trash hauler and another $5 fee from the compost hauler, we'd be collecting more from that homeowner than it costs to provide the service to them. This is based, at least it has been based on taxing the collection of trash. I can confirm with the city attorney that that's the right read. If it's not, then we need to adjust our approach.
I think that it probably is not the right read, because I think that compost is solid waste under the definition. And so I would ask you to please check with the city attorney. And if we if we can lower the cost because it's getting spread around in a different way, lower the cost of the tax, then, well, that's what we need to do. But everybody has got to not throw their compost in the garbage, but it's got to get collected and got to be disposed of in some fashion. So we should look at that and not just ignore it, please.
Okay, we can certainly check on that. I think there's definitely some good policy questions and administrative efficiency questions about whether we collect a tax from two different haulers for the same address going forward. But let's do the due diligence behind the scenes and we can connect on that.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anna? I had one question. It was more of a curiosity. The 12,100 RDUs at $566 a month is $820 something thousand a year. Is that just go to the general fund, or is that like specifically earmarked in a reserved fund, restricted fund?
So that's a good question. So it does go to the general fund. There is a general fund program called recycling that is within DPW's budget, general fund budget. It is not a standalone kind of enterprise fund or a special revenue fund like traffic. That said, we do evaluate the cost of providing that program and the revenue it brings in, and seek to make sure that the tax is covering the cost of the program plus its associated overhead of the general fund. So that 800,000 is the cost of the program itself plus the associated overhead from the general fund.
Okay, thank you. I just more of a point of curiosity information for me.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else have anything else on this? Before we close it and move on, do you have other things in your director's report?
I will say the Champlain Parkway winter season shutdown is happening December 1st, Friday, so that there will be some minimal amount of work in the off season, mainly related to things off street like signal work. But by and large, the site will be battened down for the winter by Friday. And I will leave it at that for, we're also setting up a public meeting for the Main Street businesses following the city council meeting regarding the Great Streets Main Street project. We're aiming for a mid-December meeting for that constituency. So we'll keep you posted on that front as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next item on our agenda are councilor items, and Jean had raised an open item for us, which was trying to do some scheduling as a committee on what items that are sort of, well, I don't call them discretionary, but that aren't like staff items that we raised as councilors that we would like to attend to, or items that are consequences of council resolutions that we passed. And recently we passed resolutions about VTANG and about McNeil and the district energy project that have obligations in them to TUC. So what I would like to do is schedule sort of a scheduling meeting, which my understanding is we can do that without warning it, without open meeting law. As long as we don't deliberate on anything, we can talk about what we want to talk about at one of our scheduled warned meetings. So I'm wondering if you both would be open to doing sort of a, maybe we could do it by Zoom or we could meet. I'm open to discussing that, and we could maybe do it, next week or the following week if people had time in their schedule. So I didn't know, I'll just put that out there, but consideration and for your comments.
I have time on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. Looks like I've got time on Thursday as well.
Tuesday and Wednesday for me, next week. So,
I can't do Wednesday, or I could make Tuesday work.
Thursday could work as well, if that works better for you, Hannah, I could make that work.
I am not available Thursday either.
And so maybe we could carve out, I think we could probably do it in an hour or so. And what in addition to the list that Chapin provided, which is part of the packet material under the councilor items, we'd also want to look, and what I'll do is I'll go grab the two resolutions that I spoke about, the VTANG resolution and the District Energy McNeil resolution, and distribute those just convenience, even though I know you can find them, I'll just send them along, and then we'll have that to talk about. And so would your preferences be to meet or to Zoom or?
I think Zoom would be easier for me. It will, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then in terms of start time, what's better for you if we started at like 5, or can we do 5, or would you like to do later?
I defer to Hannah.
5 is fine.
Do you have a time that is that fine, or is there a time you prefer, Hannah?
No, I can make 5 work. That's fine.
So 5 on Tuesday. What day of the week is that?
It's the 5th.
It's what I just don't have it. The first is Friday, so that would be what, 5th?
Yep.
So December 5th at 5 p.m. we'll have a virtual meeting for an hour to discuss scheduling. Yeah, and I'll
Great.
send some sort of invite out on that.
And if we could add the GMT fair and funding issue to the list, because I think that is just an ongoing issue that we need to keep monitoring.
It sounds good. And I'll figure out a virtual platform. My free Zoom account has a 40-minute limit on it, so I'll see if we can do something. I'll either get a city one, or we'll do Teams or something. I'll figure something out.
Thank you.
This week. Good. Any other councilor items?
You have to go, right? In a minute.
I have to go soon. We're right on time right now, I'll say, which is very
I'll
nice.
move to adjourn so you get out.
We have to talk
time.
about our next official TOOC meeting as well. That isn't our scheduling meeting.
Right.
Tentatively, it's set for 12/19. Does that work for folks, assuming we get a room? And I don't know, Julia, can you see if this room's available?
This room and hi, this is Maddie. This room and the Sharon Busher conference room are both booked. I reached out to BED to see if they have a space available, and I can also reach out to GMT if they don't. Open to suggestion otherwise if
We can
neither
find a space if it works for you.
It works for me. It can work. I mean, does it work for other counselors?
The 19th at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll find a spot.
We'll just find a spot somewhere.
We can also look at Fletcher Free Library. They have a bunch of community rooms that are normally open, and if you guys need help, most of the time they let me reserve space for meetings. So just let me know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Right?
Yeah, second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 6:41.
There you go.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.